Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The datapad slipped through numb fingers, clattering against the cold marble floor, the glowing screen illuminating the single word that shattered Julian's reality: positive. He couldn't breathe. The air in the lavish, gilded bathroom felt suddenly thin, as if the oxygen had been siphoned out by the terrifying truth staring up at him. Julian Vane, the fallen strategist of the defeated Southern Republic, a man of logic, warfare, and cold calculation, was pregnant. It was a biological impossibility, a cruel joke of nature, or perhaps the final, twisting knife of the curse his bloodline carried. But biology didn't care about his shock. The nausea that had plagued him for weeks, the strange shifting of his internal mana, the exhaustion, it all made a sickening amount of sense. But the terror gripping his heart wasn't just about the anomaly growing inside him. It was about him. The father. The man sleeping in the master suite down the hall. Archduke Cassian Blackwood. The warlord of the North. The monster who had conquered Julian's country, placed a suppression collar on his neck, and claimed him as a war prize. If Cassian found out, Julian wouldn't be a prisoner anymore. He would be a laboratory specimen. Or worse, he would be bound to the Archduke forever. Not by chains, but by blood. Julian gripped the edge of the sink, his knuckles white. He had to run. Tonight. The plan was already half-formed in his mind, a remnant of the brilliant tactician he used to be before the war broke him. The suppression collar dampened his ability to use magic, but it didn't dull his intellect. He knew the rotation of the perimeter guards. He knew that the sensory jamming field dipped for exactly 30 seconds at 3 o'clock hours during the server reset. He splashed cold water on his face, staring at his reflection. Pale skin, dark circles under violet eyes that once commanded armies, and a trembling mouth. He looked like a ghost. "Pull yourself together," he hissed at the mirror. For the child. The words felt foreign, heavy on his tongue. He touched his flat stomach tentatively. There was a spark there. A tiny, foreign signature of life that felt like a mixture of his own cool mana and Cassian's raging, infernal energy. He moved quickly, stepping out of the bathroom and into the dim bedroom assigned to him. It wasn't a cell. Cassian preferred his birds in gilded cages, but it was a prison nonetheless. He grabbed a satchel, stuffing it with a few nutrient bars he'd hoarded, a stolen comms dagger, and a heavy cloak. He crept into the hallway. The silence of the Blackwood estate was oppressive. The walls were lined with portraits of Cassian's ancestors, all dark-haired, red-eyed predators who looked down on Julian with disdain. He reached the service elevator. He pried the panel open with the tip of the dagger, bypassing the biometric lock with a sequence of wire crossings he had memorized from watching a technician weeks ago. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Step 1 complete. He descended to the sub-basement, the garage level. If he could hotwire a skimmer, he could make it to the Deadlands before sunrise. The radiation in the Deadlands would mask his biosignature. It was dangerous for the baby, but staying here was a death sentence. The elevator dinged. Julian stepped out into the cavernous garage, his breath misting in the frigid air. Shadows stretched long and distorted between the rows of armored vehicles. He spotted a light reconnaissance bike near the exit ramp. Perfect. Fast, maneuverable. He sprinted toward it, his boots silent on the concrete. He reached the bike, his hands flying over the ignition console. "Going somewhere, Julian?" The voice was low, smooth, and rolled over him like a wave of dark water. Julian froze. His heart slammed against his ribs, so hard it hurt. Slowly, he turned around. Cassian Blackwood was leaning against a pillar 10 feet away. He was wearing a black silk robe that hung loosely over his broad shoulders, exposing the jagged scars on his chest, scars Julian had traced with trembling fingers only nights ago in the throes of a hate-fueled passion. The Archduke's eyes, glowing with a predatory crimson light, were fixed on Julian. "I asked you a question," Cassian said, pushing off the pillar and taking a slow, deliberate step forward. The air pressure in the room dropped, the sheer weight of his aura pressing down on Julian. "I need fresh air," Julian lied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his veins. "In the sub-basement? At 3 in the morning? With a packed bag?" Cassian tilted his head, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "You always were a terrible liar when you were frightened, strategist. I am leaving, Cassian, Julian said, stepping back, his hand drifting toward the dagger in his pocket. Our arrangement. I can't do it anymore. You are a prisoner of war, Cassian reminded him, his voice hardening. You leave when I say you leave. Or have you forgotten the collar? Cassian raised a hand. The silver band around Julian's neck hummed. A jolt of warning pain shot through Julian's nerves, bringing him to his knees. NGH. Julian gasped, clutching his chest. But the pain wasn't just from the collar. A sudden, sharp cramp seized his abdomen, vicious and deep. The stress. The adrenaline. It was too much for his condition. Julian curled in on himself, a low groan escaping his lips. He wrapped his arms around his stomach instinctively, a protective gesture that did not go unnoticed by the predator watching him. Cassian's eyes narrowed. The cruelty vanished, replaced by a sharp, calculating intensity. He closed the distance between them in a blur of motion. Get up, Cassian ordered, reaching down to grab Julian's arm. Don't touch me. Julian snarled, lashing out with the dagger. It was a pathetic strike. Cassian caught his wrist effortlessly, twisting it until the blade clattered to the floor. But he didn't pull Julian up. He froze, his hand still gripping Julian's wrist. Cassian was a prime alpha, a warlord with senses enhanced by dark magic. He could hear a heartbeat from a mile away. And right now, holding Julian's pulse point, he could sense something else. A second heartbeat. Faint. Fluttering. But undeniably there. The silence that descended on the garage was deafening. Cassian went rigid. His crimson eyes widened, the pupils contracting to slits. He looked from Julian's wrist to his stomach, then up to Julian's terrified face. What? Cassian whispered, his voice vibrating with a terrifying mix of awe and fury. Is that? Julian trembled, tears pricking his eyes. Nothing. It's nothing. Do not lie to me. Cassian roared, the sound echoing off the concrete walls like a thunderclap. The sheer force of his voice shattered the glass of a nearby vehicle. There is a second life signature inside you. A blood echo. He ripped the satchel from Julian's shoulder and dumped the contents on the floor. The datapad slid out, screen still active. Cassian snatched it up. He read the report. Once. Twice. When he looked back at Julian, his expression was unreadable. The rage was gone, replaced by a cold, terrifying mask of possession. You knew, Cassian said softly. You knew, and you tried to run into the Deadlands. With my heir. It's not your heir. Julian shouted, desperation making him reckless. It's a mistake. A curse. Men can't. I can't be. You are a vain, Cassian interrupted, dropping the datapad and kneeling before Julian. He didn't care about the dirt on his silk robe. The ancient text spoke of your bloodline's unique mana adaptation. I thought it was a myth. A fairy tale to drive alliances. Cassian reached out. Julian flinched, expecting a blow. Instead, Cassian's large, calloused hand landed gently on Julian's stomach. The heat from his palm seeped through Julian's shirt, searing his skin. Get off, Julian sobbed, trying to push him away. You'll turn it into a weapon. You'll take it away from me. Is that what you think? Cassian asked, his voice low. He didn't move his hand. You think I would harm my own blood? You harmed me. Julian screamed. You destroyed my country. You enslaved me. Why would you be any different to a child? Because it is ours, Cassian said, the possessive pronoun hanging heavy in the air. Suddenly, another cramp hit Julian, harder this time. He cried out, doubling over, his vision blurring. Julian. Cassian's voice shifted instantly. The arrogance vanished, replaced by urgency. Julian, look at me. It hurts. Julian gasped. Something's wrong. Cassian didn't hesitate. He scooped Julian up into his arms, lifting him as if he weighed nothing. Hold on. Cassian commanded, turning and sprinting toward the elevator. If you die, Vane, I will drag you back from hell myself. The medical wing of the estate was sterile white, a stark contrast to the gothic darkness of the rest of the castle. Julian lay on a bio bed, monitors beeping in a rhythmic cadence. And Fordrip was feeding a glowing blue fluid into his arm, pure mana stabilizer. He felt floaty, the pain reduced to a dull ache. He blinked his eyes open. Cassian was sitting in a chair beside the bed. He was still wearing the dirty robe, his arms crossed, staring intently at the holographic display floating above Julian's midsection. The display showed a complex weave of biological data and a small, pulsing light. "You're awake," Cashin said without looking at him. "Did I lose it?" Julian asked, his voice rasping. He hadn't wanted this pregnancy, but the thought of losing it now caused a strange hollow ache in his chest. "No," Cashin said. He finally looked at Julian. His red eyes were dim, tired. The stress caused a mana fluctuation. The fetus was rejecting your distressed energy. The doctors stabilized it. Julian let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Oh, you are confined to bed rest for the next 2 months, Cashin stated, his tone brooking no argument. "I have doubled the guard. I have installed sensors in your room that monitor your biometrics constantly. If your heart rate rises above a certain threshold, I will be alerted instantly." Julian glared at him, the old fire returning. "So, I am to be a broodmare now?" Shackled even tighter. "You are to be the father of the next Archduke," Cashin corrected. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Julian, do you understand what this means? My family. The Blackwood line is dying. The dark magic we wield burns us out. We have fertility rates near zero. This child is not just an accident. It is a miracle. It is a child, Cashin," Julian snapped. "Not a political tool. Not a savior for your cursed timeline. It can be both." Cashin stood up and walked to the side of the bed. He looked down at Julian, his expression complex. For the first time, Julian saw something other than hunger or cruelty in the warlord's eyes. He saw fear. The fear of a man who had finally been given something he couldn't afford to lose. "Why did you try to run?" Cashin asked quietly. "Did you really think I would kill you?" "You hate me," Julian whispered. "I am your enemy. I led the southern resistance that killed your brother." "I killed your father," Cashin countered. "We are even on the ledger of death." He reached out, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from Julian's forehead. The touch was startlingly gentle. "I do not hate you, Julian. Hate is simple. What I feel for you is inconvenient, consuming." Cashin's thumb traced the line of Julian's jaw. "When I saw the report, when I realized you carried a part of me, the thought of you alone in the Deadlands, dying in the radiation, it terrified me." Julian stared at him, stunned. The warlord of the North did not admit to terror. "So what happens now?" Julian asked. "Now," Cashin said, his eyes darkening with renewed intensity, "we rewrite the terms of your surrender." He leaned down, his face inches from Julian's. "You will carry this child. You will remain by my side. And in exchange," Cashin paused, "in exchange, I will give you the one thing you have always wanted." "My freedom?" Julian asked hopefully. Cashin smirked, a dark, possessive curve of his lips. "No, you will never be free of me. Not now. But I will give you power. You will not be a prisoner. You will be my consort. You will have equal command of this household, of my armies. If anyone looks at you with disrespect, I will take their eyes. If anyone threatens you or the child, I will burn their lineage to ash." Julian swallowed hard. It was a deal with the devil. But looking at the holographic monitor, at the tiny pulsing life that bound them together, he realized he had no other choice. "And if I refuse?" "You won't," Cashin said, leaning in to press a kiss to Julian's forehead. "A seal, a claim, a promise. Because you are a strategist, Julian. And you know that the safest place for that baby is right here, in the belly of the beast." Julian closed his eyes. He felt the warmth of Cashin's hand return to his stomach, covering the spot where their chaotic, impossible future was growing. "Fine," Julian whispered. "But if you ever try to take him from me, Cashin, I will burn this fortress down from the inside out." Cashin laughed softly, a low rumble that vibrated through the bed. "I would expect nothing less from the mother of my child. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf." If you enjoyed seeing Julian bring the warlord to his knees, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who held you captive if he offered you the world? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.